I gotta say, this year looked pretty grim for movies in my opinion, but right towards the end of the year, we had some really excellent films come out, and they made this a very good year for movies. So without any further ado, let's get this top 5 list started. Number 5. Pearl. Pearl is a sequel slash prequel to X, a slasher movie that I thought was decent, but I didn't like it like other people did. Pearl, on the other hand, is a movie that I was captivated by from beginning to end. I had no idea what kind of crazy fest I was in for. This movie is about a woman who is mentally falling apart, or in my opinion, is slowly revealing her true crazy self that she was trying to keep buried. And watching it slowly unveil is where the disturbing and creepy part of the movie comes in. Now the best thing about this movie is the performances. Everyone in this movie does a fantastic job, but the actress that plays Pearl, Mia Goth, she was so good in this. Too good, in fact. Her performance in this movie doesn't even feel like acting. It feels like in real life she is actually crazy. Her performance actually freaked me out, it was that good. You'll know what I mean when you see the movie. This film had a very simple premise, and seeing X first definitely helps make you appreciate little details that this movie sets up. I went into this movie not expecting much, and I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it. And the movie sticks with you and gets better the more you think about it. This movie really surprised me with how good it was, so much so that it earned a spot on this list. Number 4. Glass Onion. Yup, another Knives Out movie made my top 5 list. I just saw this movie recently with my brothers and we had a downright blast with this film. The first thing that surprised me was how much I enjoyed the cast. The first movie had an amazing cast with very big and recognizable names, and when the cast of the sequel was announced, I thought it was good, but it wasn't on the same level as the cast in the first movie. But to my surprise, I actually enjoyed these characters a lot more than the characters in the first film. The first movie was just a bunch of a-hole family members, whereas in the second movie, you have a bunch of a-hole co-workers, and I really thought they had so much depth to them and were a lot more interesting. And then you have the actual mystery, and just like the great mysteries out there, Glass Onion has a lot of rewatch value, as it plants so many seeds and visual clues early on that you don't even realize. And once the movie is over, you just have to watch the movie again to pick up on them and see if they were really there. The first movie, on the other hand, I couldn't care less if I went back to see if they were there. So your experience really does change on your second viewing. The movie is a lot more tightly written than the first film too, and although I am sure you can pick holes in this movie, you have to think a lot harder to do it. The movie wasn't perfect. Just like the first movie, my first guess of who the killer is was right. Blanc seemed goofier and much more over the top in this movie, which I didn't really like, and I couldn't help but notice a few similarities to the first movie which felt a little recycled here. But on the whole, this was a great sequel, and I actually enjoyed it more than the first movie. I thought the mystery was much better too, and Blanc has become a character that I really want to see more of. Rian Johnson, when he's not fucking up Star Wars, he's making some good mystery movies. Number 3. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. Of the 3 Pinocchio movies that came out this year, this is by far the best one. It felt very original, whilst also sticking to the story that we know and love. This was a beautifully tragic movie, and it told the most different version of Pinocchio's story that I have seen. The voice acting was great, the music was great, even though it reminded me of the Conjuring's theme a little, and the stop motion animation is some of the best I have seen. This really was a great miracle of a movie, and I say this because we got 2 shitty versions of Pinocchio this year. I don't know how 2022 happened to be the year of Pinocchio films, but it was. And it was a relief to have the year end with a version that was so good that it makes up for the 2 bad movies. Almost.
Father, when can I leave to be on my own? I've got the whole world to see.
Expect me to cover this movie in more detail in the future, as I was very impressed with this interpretation of the story, and that's why it takes a top spot on this list. Number 2. Avatar: The Way of Water. I know a lot of people are not going to agree, but this is my list, and although I acknowledge that the story is very similar to the first movie, the one distinguishing factor that really won me over was the theme of family. I really could relate to the family element in this movie, and it reminded me of my childhood with my family and what happens when you travel to an unfamiliar location with new people, and I thought that was executed so well, and I was getting pretty choked up with the movie's final scene, which again relates to family. The rest of the movie was one of the best theatre experiences I have had. The visuals were spectacular, the sound mixing was awesome, and I felt so immersed in this world. And it's a world that you just can't get enough of. The 3D was fantastic, the action scenes were incredible, and I liked the villains, despite the odd retcon here and there. This movie has done incredibly well at the box office and is continuing to perform incredibly well. And that doesn't happen unless the movie is connecting with people. And for me, it really did. And that's why it's number 2 on this list. Expect me to cover this movie in more detail in the future as well, as for all its flaws, I was still very impressed with it. Number 1. Yeah, you all knew this was coming. What can I say? The Batman is the only movie this year that I went to see twice and is the only movie that gets better and better the more I see it. This is visually one of the best looking comic book movies ever made. It is full of atmosphere, the world building is great, the characters are very well done, the villains are great, the action is great, even the sound design is absolutely phenomenal. The sound of the Batmobile's engine alone is the best sound mixing I've heard in a comic book movie in years. How is it that the big fantastical action scenes in Thor: Love and Thunder have sound design that is so flat, and yet the Batmobile's engine is surrounding you and booming throughout the whole room? Even the sound design for the final battle was amazing. Those guns packed so much punch. Not only were the practical effects and technical aspects of this movie phenomenal, but the storytelling was also great. This is the first comic book movie to do a proper noir detective story, and it was full of tension and intrigue, and it was so dark. This is the darkest Batman movie to date that it was actually given a 15 certificate here in the UK, which is the equivalent to an R rating. This movie does what other comic book movies don't do. Batman has been in the suit for 2 years and he still hasn't figured out how to be Batman. And in this movie, we see him learn, as well as being hit by some very harsh lessons along the way. With every other superhero movie, once the superhero gets into their costumes, they've pretty much become the superhero. But this made a lot more sense as far as a superhero's character arc goes, especially for a hero as troubled as Batman. The way the movie delves into Bruce Wayne's mental state, the way it exposes similarities between him and his villains, the way it masterfully sets up future sequels without being obvious, and while still working as a standalone movie, this is everything a Batman fan like me could want. And that's why this movie is undoubtedly the best movie of 2022. And for those wondering about Top Gun Maverick, I saw the movie just recently and it was going to be in my top 5 list because I really enjoyed it. But then a few days went by and I sat on the movie and I started to forget about it. And that wasn't the case for the rest of the movies on this list, so Top Gun Maverick would be 6th on this list for me. But still, I rate that movie very highly and it is a must watch on the big screen. No wonder Tom Cruise was not having it go on streaming services during the pandemic. Thankfully, I was able to watch it on my 4K projector with Dolby Atmos sound. And yeah, I get it, this movie was great. The only movie that I did not see yet was Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, because in America this movie is already out. But here in the UK, the movie doesn't come to theatres until the 3rd of February. So yeah, I thought release dates like that don't happen anymore in the UK. I hear the movie is amazing, so I'll definitely see it when it comes out. So, that's my top 5 or top 6 list of 2022. Comment below with your top 5 lists, as I will be really interested in reading them. And thank you so much for a fantastic year, guys. I appreciate each and every single one of you and your support on the channel, your support on Patreon, as well as my Instagram and TikTok. I really do love making content for you guys, and I can't wait to get started on another year of YouTube. And I look very forward to catching all of you next time. Take care.